What is the value of data? What is the financial value of data? These are questions we need to answer. As the practice director for C-Suite Data, I practice due diligence on how our teams are trained and how they engage with our Fortune clients, especially when the engagement involves big data. This last month, I talked to a lot of organizers of events on big data, events on analytics. I talked to people in California, Ontario, Canada, New York, and even Hong Kong and the UK. I was surprised at the level of consistency. Everyone, no matter where they were in the world, were saying the same things about big data. They were using the same words, the same ideas, and the same approaches. The very same approaches that Fortune 100 to Fortune 1000 companies, global companies, use. I'm Chris Bahura, and welcome to my channel, Breaking Status Quo. Do you know what everyone is saying about big data? If you talk to the presenters, look at the cliff notes, and the executive summaries, you see a lot of common words. You see the word analytics, big data, data science, Hadoop, with a lot of filler words in between. And once you dig in deep into what these presenters really want to talk about, the business value, you hear about cost reductions, data insights, and efficiencies. Doesn't this sound familiar? Isn't this the same things we talked about at least 10 years ago when we were talking about business intelligence? And what about 10 years prior to that? Weren't we discussing the same things when we were talking about ERP systems and SAP? Do we really gain anything by having these very dated ideas when we talk about big data? From these discussions, do we gain an understanding of the value, the true value of big data and what big data brings to the table? From these discussions, are we able to visualize the ideal big data solutions from top to bottom, from A to Z? From these discussions, are we able to gain a strong understanding of the width and depth of the business outcomes that big data allows us to achieve? Let's take a step back and look at how Fortune 100 to Fortune 1000 companies leverage big data. Fortune companies contain business units. Each business unit is supported by analytics, and what supports the analytics is IT and the data that runs on that IT. Then the powers that be replace IT with big data IT. And why would they do that? Often, many of the main players have a strong misunderstanding on what big data is. Some get confused by the Wikipedia definition, others make the assumption that it's only a technology, automation, or a series of databases. And it doesn't help that the main players are being guided and directed by people who are strongly positioned on big data and what big data means. People who are not familiar on how to develop a level of diversity in the big data strategy and solutions. Instead of diversity, big data becomes much more narrow, constrained by the various ideas perpetuated by academia, industry thought leaders, and the various data camps that people have worked in for the last few decades. And all this drives us to treat big data as a replacement for IT. And because of this replacement mentality, many Fortune companies treat each business unit to have its own big data solution. Marketing will have its own solution, operations will have its own solution, supply chain will have its own solution, with little, if any, conversation or coordination between the other business units. Because the data is deep down inside the business units, there is a gap between corporate governance and the business units, degrading any attempts on data governance down to IT governance. For corporate governance, we need data for estimates, data for measurements, data to gauge the level of impact, at the very least for the organization, impact from regulations, and also the impact of process improvements, enhancements on the organization and the revenue stream. And we can get all this through healthy data governance. To get this healthiness, we need to consolidate the data at the lowest levels of the business units and bring the data up. Make the data more transparent to corporate governance and more transparent to executive leadership. Having data transparent at all levels of the organization will allow executive leadership to treat data as an asset, to treat data as capital. And this will shift data to be an executive priority, springboarding corporate governance to have deeper conversations about data, not just from a data management perspective, but from an innovation and cultural perspective as well. Having data capital will also help us target our investments on human capital and on the capabilities and competencies of how we do analysis within our organization. For all of this to work, for having data as data capital and having data as an executive priority, data must be directly responsible for revenue growth. To understand this, let's take a peek at how companies achieve revenue growth. Here are a few things taken straight out of our team's handbooks, training materials, and approaches. The foundation to our revenue growth is our customers, how we attract, service, and grow our customers. We lose revenue growth through customer attrition and through customer termination. We acquire and keep our customers by using human capital, by using salespeople and non-salespeople. With the right human capital, we can multiply our revenue growth. And we do this by attracting the right people, having the right people contribute, investing in and growing the right people, and especially on how we handle employee attrition and employee termination. We can further multiply our revenue growth through managing our corporate capital. We can multiply our revenue growth by building capital, by expanding our operations, or merging with other companies. We also can expand our revenue growth through alignment and sustaining our operations, and further achieve revenue growth by cutting resources and staff, doing a demerger, or selling off of our capital and assets. Now here's data capital. Data capital also multiplies our revenue growth. It does this by multiplying the effectiveness of our capabilities and competencies on doing everything that was discussed on the left, from customers to human capital to corporate capital. Data capital both drives and supports planning, innovation, transparency, unification of everything business from A to Z, and also the reinvention of products, services, and even the reinvention and evolution of the company itself. The key purpose of data capital, the key purpose of big data, is not only to drive revenue growth, but also to multiply and maximize revenue growth. So why aren't people talking about revenue growth when they talk about big data? It's because we're talking to the wrong people. People with the wrong focus. People emphasizing the wrong outcomes. It's because we're talking to people that are highly traditional. People that feel comfortable doing what they've been doing for decades. This makes it difficult to take advantage of a new wave of innovations where you have to be familiar with diversity, culture, and the true nature of being data-driven. These skills are very difficult to acquire and extremely difficult to hire for. To get the people we need to bring aboard management consultants with a data emphasis. Not a team of management consultants and data consultants, but a team where every person on that team does both management consulting and data consulting. Let's take a deeper dive on how these management consultants will fully leverage the true potential of big data. First, the management consultant emphasizes data capital and scopes big data to drive, multiply, and maximize revenue growth. Second, the management consultant will set up a series of roadmaps that will help establish data capital and big data within the organization. Roadmaps will emphasize building capabilities and competencies in the following areas: planning, innovation, transparency, unification, and reinvention. Third, the management consultant will estimate and scope out the needed projects and programs, then assess, establish, and review the foundations for a healthy data office. Fourth, The management consultant will serve as a project manager, program manager, and when needed, a data officer for these projects and programs. To leverage the full potential of big data, it's a good idea to bring in a team of management consultants. After all, big data involves changing the business's DNA, how the business works. And changing the DNA is a big job. Let's end the video by looking again at step 2 and taking a deeper dive into those roadmaps, especially with the capabilities and competencies being developed. For planning, we want to have the capability of keeping on schedule, and we want to have the competencies of being able to explore scenarios and what-if situations so that we still stay on schedule. To do this, we need to establish a proactive way of planning that emphasizes prediction, forecast rules, and accurate estimation, backed up with actions. For innovation, we want the capability to have the right options and develop the competency of having the right knowledge specialized for our organization and specialized for our industry. To accomplish this, we need to emphasize less politics in discussions and decision-making, emphasize of developing new skills and providing new services to the industry, services that include sensors and robotics. For transparency, we need to develop the capability of having the right investments and developing the competency of diversity across the organization. To do this, we need to negotiate transparency, especially around the politics, focus on closing crucial gaps, emphasize the reaction time between organizational events and marketing events, and also focus on transformational efforts and programs. For unification, we need to develop the capability of having the right estimates and develop the competency of having a high-performance culture. And to do this, we need to establish models that span the whole organization, that communicates and reflects how things change and influence each other across the business from A to Z. These models need to integrate and be tightly coupled to what is actually going on within the business, and also be tied to the plans and organizational structure. These models also need to incorporate people, their behaviors, skills, and cultural camps. For reinvention, we want to develop the capability of knowing that we're doing it right, that we have the right people doing the right things, servicing the right customers. We also want to develop a strong talent pool, a strong competency and skill set to serve the data-driven organization. To do this, we need to articulate what data-driven really means and what does it mean across the business from A to Z. We also need to establish the changes in prioritization and how executives, middle management, and those in the trenches prioritize things based on data. We also need to look at how data helps us establish new markets and develop new leaders. And finally, where does the data officer come into play? How does the data officer fit within the executive team? How does the data officer work with the executive team? How does the data officer work across the organization? Winding down, the true potential and benefits of big data are eroded by conversations. Conversations that emphasize grassroots or data insights, replacements to IT, and an emphasis on costs and brand names for big data technologies. These take the eye off the ball on what big data has become, something that can help drive, multiply, and maximize revenue growth. It's time to be data-driven. What are your thoughts on data capital? What is your scope for big data? How do you train your people to be big data experts? Let's continue the conversation. Give me a call at country code 1-226-984-8102 or shoot me an email at cpehura@csuitedata.com. Thanks for listening.